Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to the episode where we look at some interesting games.
Interesting, yeah?
Oh yeah. Boy.
Really interesting.
Oh, you're not going to believe it.
Absolute crackers.
Oh, some absolute bangers, belters.
Stunners.
I can't think of any more.
I was struggling there, to be fair. It was a narrow victory.
Yeah, well done. So, what are the interesting games we've been playing? And make sure you let us know yours as well in the comments because it provides some interest. And to the guy that's just written first in the comments, I'm not going to reply. Let's find out. I want to kick off with a game called Rivertales Stronger Together, which I saw in your upcoming games video and thought that looks nice.
Yeah, it's a co-op experience. I think you can play it in single player as well, where you play as a fish and a cat, one each. And you need to traverse the levels, obviously one on land, one in the water, as you would expect, helping each other out so you can get through each of the stages.
Yeah, there is a little story attached at the start. I've completely forgotten what it was. And when I went back to start a new game, it didn't seem to give me an option. So we're assuming that they're on a quest to get something. I just can't remember what it was.
Probably, yeah, the MacGuffin of power.
That's the one.
That's what they're after.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah. So the gameplay basically follows a familiar premise where you're both on screen at the same time. You're both trying to get past different obstacles by helping each other out. So the fish can like grab onto things and pull platforms up and things.
Exactly. Yeah. Obviously the cat can't go in water. The fish can't go on land. So the fish is raising platforms for the cat to jump across streams or whatever. Mm-hmm. And likewise the cat is raising bridges.
Yep.
So that the kish can kish. Kish, give me a kish. So that the fish can swim through.
Well done.
There we go.
Sentences formed. GG. Yeah, I think we're going to say some things and it's going to sound negative, but it's not meant to be. This is really directed towards the developers. Now, what you've created are essentially two different games in one. At times, the camera will shift and it will go to a top-down perspective. And during those moments, this is a very enjoyable and, quite clever little puzzle platformer.
Yeah.
However, what happens most of the time?
Yeah, most of the time it's that classic fixed perspective 3D platformer that you used to get back in the day where you can't judge the depth perception well enough. So, of course, if you're the cat, if you're the fish, it's not as big a problem. But when you're trying to make these jumps, it's very difficult to see where you're going to land. And as Mark said, it does have these moments where it does pick the camera up to that top-down view. And at those times, it's fine.
Yeah. Very
enjoyable game. The controls are a little bit heavy at times and then quite slippery at others. So there are issues with this game, but if they'd have just given you an opportunity to lift that camera up, on demand, it would have been exponentially better.
It really would have, because as it stands, it makes it nigh on impossible at times to judge distances and your current location within the 3D world. And all the developers, all you need to do, I say all, because you've clearly got the camera built to that top perspective already in the engine.
Yeah.
You need to put a button that you can press to set the camera above whenever you want to help you do a little bit of platforming, and then you can set it back as and when you choose.
Exactly. And because obviously it gets more complicated as you go on, so there'll be times where the fish needs to pull one platform up, raise it up, and then swim around to get the other lever to pull the second one up, and all the while the cat's got to jump over. If you're the cat, you're having to take a few moments just to make sure you're lined up properly. You don't have those few moments, and it's a shame because there is definitely potential here. I do think this is a decent game, almost in waiting.
Absolutely.
It's got the puzzles are relatively clever. Perhaps a little generic, but for what they are and for the audience they're aimed for, they're absolutely fine. But it's too difficult for children because of the frustration level, and it's a bit too, with respect, juvenile for adults almost. Do you know what I mean? It kind of falls in somewhere in between.
Yeah, I said when we were playing it kind of reminds me of the early stages of Baldo. You could see the potential there, but there were a lot of key mechanics that just weren't in the game. And then those developers obviously went back and put that stuff in and added extra content in. So yeah, I'm more than happy to revisit this one in an all patched up episode if they put in that top-down camera button. But without it, you can't recommend it.
No. Which is a shame because it should be recommendable. There's enough here that's good, but it's overshadowed by some flaws, I'm afraid. Next we have a game called Abathor, which by the time you watch this should be either out or just about to come out. Obviously summer holidays are coming, children are off school, so we're having to record this as and when we can. But it's basically a like a retro-inspired 2D platformer, but it does have co-op certainly for 2 people, wasn't it? Up to 4, yeah, there are 4 characters, so you can play with up to 4. This was a very pleasant surprise, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I saw this again on the eShop, just browsing,
Yeah.
and it had a demo, and it has a demo, so you can go check it out. The demo is quite substantial. It's like 4 levels or something and a boss. And I played it and was like, actually, this is decent. It's good fun. And the idea of co-op in a game like this, I think elevates it, and it works well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I was expecting it to be one of those like nails hard platformers. Yeah. Like Volgor the Viking or like your classic Ghosts and Goblins, that sort of thing. So far at least, it's not reached that. But it's still very enjoyable. You have your basic attack, and obviously that will change depending on which of the 4 characters you choose. You have a stamina-based heavier attack, and then you have special weapons that you can pick up, like consumables that you can pick up to use as well.
Yeah, on that subject of difficulty, it's got 3 different difficulty modes. You can choose easy, which gives you like 99 continues. Basically means you're never going to lose.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Then we were playing on medium, which I think gives you 6 continues or 6 lives. And then there's a hardcore mode.
Okay.
That I think is like old school, like what you're talking about,
right,
brutal.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Actually, that's quite a good way of doing it, isn't it? To not make it stupidly hard by default, but have it in there for those that want the challenge. Yeah, I felt the normal then difficulty was very accessible. Actually, I didn't think it was, it wasn't too hard, but it wasn't too easy. It was pretty much just like Goldilocks used to say, just right.
The Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, and on that last boss, I think we both had like 1 hit point. I had like 1 hit point left. You had like 2. So it was just about right.
Yeah, it was. And it was quite a good first boss, actually, because you had, it's like a Kraken, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You released the Kraken. But you had a lot of crowd control was needed as well, in terms of enemies making their way on the other side of the screen, which I quite liked, actually. You don't normally get that on a first boss.
So I used to live in Australia.
Yeah.
Right, and then mate, he could never wear trousers that fit.
Right.
So every time he bent over, we used to say, he's released the Kraken. Honestly, that thing, you don't want to see that. Sea monster.
Oh, man. Imagine it's rising out of the ocean.
Oh, it was. Oh,
I'm sure it did on many an occasion.
Yeah, it just made me chuckle. I want to talk about Trails Through Daybreak, more because it has that interesting mechanic that I think, we will both discuss. So basically, the combat in Trails Through is it Trails? I always say it wrong. Trials?
No, it's Trails. Yeah,
Trails
Trails
Through Daybreak.
Yes.
Man, these names. It basically has combat that allows you to switch to turn-based when you want. So you can do real-time action combat, swiping around, doing a special move. It's pretty simplistic with a lock-on mechanic. But then if you find yourself struggling, you can hold down the Y button and switch to turn-based combat. It feels like a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
Because I hate grinding through little battles.
Yeah.
If you're going to fight 57 slimes, I want to walk in and just punch them in the face and walk off.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to have to go into that transition. Plus that there's no load screen. So it's just instantly into that section. They've finally made JRPG combat for me enjoyable again. I was so bored of turn-based. I can do it, but I just, when you see the screen like blur away and you're waiting 3 or 4 seconds and you go in and then you've got to wait a few seconds afterwards for it to give you your rewards.
Yeah.
I was just bored of all of that now.
Yeah, no, I understand that, to be honest. It's one of those, isn't it? It's like, in some people's view, you can't say anything against that. That's sacrilege. But it is true, things have moved on, people's lives are busy, and it does slow gameplay down, especially when you're trying to get to point B from point A or whatever. And I do like it when games do something like that. Some of them just have it, you'll walk into an enemy, and if you're strong enough, they just pop. They just go, don't they? Like, you just instantly beat them, or they run away from you, or things like that. So there have been ways of doing it in the past, but yeah, that's quite interesting. So you can fight the whole battle action-based if you want, I take it. And if it's an easy enemy, it's just one swipe, I guess, is it?
And you can speed up your overall time because you do your action-y bit, and if you stun them there, then quickly switch, they're stunned to start, and you can do these moves that kind of tie into that stun.
Right.
And will, like, just annihilate them.
So can you do the same moves in both modes?
No, so they're different moves. You have like a basic swipe attack, a power move, very simplistic from the action side,
right?
And then when you're in the other side, it just obviously feeds into whether or not they're stunned and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You have a dodge roll as well, so you can completely avoid damage, but it will really take a long time to whittle some enemies. And some enemies, I have to say, will be immune to physical attacks, so you'll need to switch over. So it's not like you can do the whole game, like that. And also some bosses will start in turn-based mode.
Oh, okay. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it just gives you a nice, keeps it fresh as well.
Yeah, I did wonder if, you just answered, but if it was possible just to go through in action and kind of completely or sidestep rather the other side of it, but it makes sure that you keep a toe in each
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't say it in my review because it's one of those topics that you say for an interesting games discussion.
Yeah.
I will say some of the storytelling veers into some slightly unusual territory. So basically you get a young girl joins you as a detective at the start.
Right.
And there's just a few lines in there that you're like, why did they keep that in there? So like, for example, she says she's very like keen on him.
Okay.
And then you find out he's 21.
Right.
And she says, oh, you're a decade older than me.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just found it, there's a few awkward moments in there. I was like, I don't know why they've kept that in there because it's all a bit like, you know? So from that regard, like other than the gameplay fine, but I did find some of the storytelling and those bits, I think they're a little bit close to the wire.
Right.
I was a bit like, okay, I don't think I needed to read that.
Yeah.
And you know what they're like in these games. You know, that side of things can very often be over-exaggerated.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind, I guess, if you're going to be playing this one with kids or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that part, but just story in general in these games, there are so many of them now, aren't there? Because you've got the Trails series, but then you've got the Legend of Heroes series itself, and this is like a spin-off of of that, and there are so many of them. It's so confusing, isn't it?
I would say this is probably the best place to start the series.
Okay.
That I've played so far. I've played the last 2 or 3 games on the Switch, but then I hadn't played all of Zero, which I think has been reviewed. Trying to get these names correct, you know, it's just one big blur at this point.
Yeah.
And I've just said if you're playing this with your kids, ignore that completely because it's completely not a kid's game. It's full of swearing.
Oh, fair enough.
Full of swearing. The guy's just dropping bombs left, right, and centre. So it's very adult-centred in terms of its, its approach. Good game though. Just a few bits I'm like, just don't even include that.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, the next one then is the recently released Turtles game.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Good game.
Yeah, Splintered Fate is the full title. Yeah, very good game. Really very good game. I mean, by now my review will be out. I'll put a link up top if you want to give it a watch. But sometimes it's hard in a review because you don't want to waffle and you don't want to go on and you don't want it to be too subjective about how much you love something. But it's hard to express just how much something has grabbed you. And obviously it's a Turtles game. I do like the Turtles, but just aside from that, this is one of the most accessible roguelites I've played in a long time in terms of, obviously being able to get on board with it. But I think it's one of the most fair as well in terms of its RNG. I think it really handles that very well, that you can have a bad run, in air quotes, in terms of what you're given, and still get to the final boss and win. And it is a war of attrition. You'll need to be clever with your strategy and avoid a lot of attacks and whatnot. And you might be, as you said earlier about something, whittling down health, but it can be done. And I think in some of these roguelites, it almost feels impossible if you don't get things go your way, Yeah,
so to add a little context to that, if you haven't seen the review, this is basically Hades with a turtle skin in terms of its mechanics. Very similar to that, and I'm sure Glen will add on to that because that might be sacrilege. But it has co-op for up to 4 players as well.
It does, yeah.
And it also has a lot of modifiers and different things to keep it interesting. Yeah, do you want to add into that?
Yeah, so as you say, it has your 4 characters that you can choose from, and that's where you get your different weapons, as opposed to in Hades where you pick up different weapons or choose a different weapon. You get a power up at the end of each area that you defeat the enemies in, and that's what I was talking about in terms of feeling strong or not, And you can build some very good, some very strong builds. Like I built a poison-focused one.
Yeah.
Where every time you dash, you deal poison, and I stacked up the amount of poison that you could deal per time, and you can constantly dash back and forth to increase that poison. And they were dying before I'd even got my sword out, you know what I mean? But then another time I tried something else and it didn't work very well, or I stupidly actually one time put everything into like fire. Say. So I had a lot of strength behind fire, and then without reading what I was doing, when I picked up a power up, I picked a water one up and got rid of my fire one, and didn't have time to build back up, but still managed to complete the run, and that's what I like about it. But as you also mentioned, there are portals once you've finished it once that you can go through that add those modifiers to make the game harder, so they can make it that enemies deal more damage, or that items in shops are more expensive, or their health bars are larger, the enemies' health bars are larger. And you can kind of start to shape the game as you want if you're finding it too easy, or you've just got to a point where you're going through runs without it giving you a challenge,
Yeah, it's very good. I do like the way that you focus on the individual turtles with the weapons. I actually prefer that to the way it works in Hades. It gives it a bit of personality as well, because they have their one-liners as you're fighting different things, and it has a real sense of personality and identity that maybe some people may have found lacking in some elements of Hades. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a direct comparison, but it will do things like carrying over the storyline. You'll fight a boss, the second time you turn up, it will say something slightly different. It's just a very solid game. Now, we did hit a few bugs with co-op mode. We managed to create a bug that basically made me invincible.
Yeah.
because I was constantly getting these 3% drops. I was getting them like every single time.
That's right, because you put your coins, so your permanent progression, your meta progression is you get these coins that you can put into certain aspects. You can make yourself stronger, or you can increase your percentage chance of XYZ.
Yeah.
One of which is getting 2 power-ups instead of just 1 when you get to the end of a stage. And we played through, and at that point I put no coins into it, so it was the default 3% chance, and every single time Mark was getting 2 power-ups, which in terms of getting through the game made it great, it made him very powerful. But I was starting to think, this is a problem. Like, if this is how the game handles its percentage chances, this is broken. Like, you're too strong.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, thankfully. It was just a glitch in that one run, and it hasn't happened since, and I've played a good 30-odd runs
Happy days.
by now. So that was good. That was a relief, because I was starting to think, oh no, like, this is going to drag the game down, but it was just that one run.
So yeah, very good game. I would suggest checking out the review. It was originally an Apple Arcade exclusive, which is why you've never heard of it, even though it was out before. I'm not going to say you never heard of it. You may well have enjoyed it on Apple Arcade, but it's very good and well worth picking up.
Yeah, for sure. Really good game. Really good game.
So I want to, right off the back of that one, chat a little bit about this Darkest Dungeon 2 that I've just reviewed. Because we almost went in the opposite directions. We're both reviewing the games. We're both saying, yeah, this is amazing right at the beginning. And then mine got less amazing and Glen's got more. And mine got less amazing because the RNG was far too severe in Darkest Dungeon 2. And it's a shame because it does so many things brilliantly. Like, the narrator does an incredibly good job of making the more mundane moments actually feel meaningful. And then the combat's well designed. You've got very good synergies between different things, using different elements against different creatures. And you do learn that over time. But the RNG, you can restart a run and hit an enemy that kills your whole team.
Right.
Like right at the beginning, and just be like, well, that sucked.
Yeah.
That's not cool. And it's so difficult, such a difficult game, even when there's no RNG taking place. You really do have to think carefully about what you're doing, that when that kills you, it can veer towards frustration.
Yeah.
And like I say, it is still objectively a very good game. I just don't think it's objectively as good as some people have said it is, just because those elements are going to frustrate a lot of players.
I think it's strange with roguelites, and maybe this is why you get such a polarising opinion from people on whether they like them or not, because depending on which ones you play, it can really favour or sour your experience of them going forward. Just to go back to that Turtles game, I'm not saying it's the best game ever, but in terms of its roguelike mechanics, they're handled so well that, as I said a minute ago, not to repeat myself, but you always feel like you've got a chance, even if you ultimately fail. But there are some games, and this sounds like one of them, where the game will just, for whatever reason, at a certain point say, no, you've had your go, bugger off.
Yeah, it does that disclaimer right at the start, you will die lots.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, you expect to die in roguelites, but if it feels pointless because you felt you were quite strong, but still something annihilates you, or you feel you've not been given a fair chance to get strong enough, it does start to get a bit annoying, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, the reason I like games like the Turtles and Hades is because that is completely skill-based.
It is skill-based.
You can have no pickups, and there are people that complete that game without getting touched.
Yeah.
Because they're damn good.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how damn good you are at this, if you just get an unfortunate run. Now, like I say, you can mitigate it. There's different trinkets and stuff you can apply to yourself, but it takes dying to learn that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's the proportion to which you'll have to die in frustrating ways to get that knowledge that I thought was a little unbalanced and didn't quite, gel with me. Even though my first couple of runs, they were great. They were objectively you've been lucky.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise that until 4 hours, 5 hours down the line when I went to a run and the polar opposite, and I was like, okay, yeah, the balance is just not quite right. And you're steering that chariot, it feels like a blooming slug. Honestly, it's like a slug with wheels. I'm like, it's the heaviest thing in the world and you're trying to dodge stuff. I like the idea, but I prefer the idea of Darkest Dungeon 1 where you're building up your home essentially and moving out from there.
So what is the purpose of the chariot?
The chariot is taking a torch that is the light of the world.
Right.
Sounds kind of biblical. And it's taking it to the mountaintop to defeat the evil.
Okay.
So that light is constantly burning down.
Yep.
Little encounters, you'll meet people, you can make choices that you'll see at the bottom of the screen, and that will either diminish the light or increase it.
I see.
It will either start the combat or run away from it, little things like that.
Yep.
So the game is basically just carrying this light, which is fine, all right, great. I think they should have doubled down on the idea of having your own home. Plus, you're in a game called Darkest Dungeon that doesn't have a dungeon. That should be illegal.
Darkest Chariot.
Darkest Chariot. Darkest. I don't know. Didn't have anything I was going to say there.
Darkest and Hope, didn't
Just
you?
exactly.
Darkest.
Glenn, help me out here.
You see the fear. Drop of sweat.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, well,
Ren and
don't
Stimpy
say anything
moment.
wrong here. The vein. But that's a silly thing. It's going to sound like I didn't like it. It's a good game. Still very good. But I would be picking this up on a nice chunky sale. You know, if I got this at 50% off, you're laughing.
Yeah.
It's like it's going to be one of those people who say, "Oh, this is a real gem." But if you're paying full whack, you might be a little bit like, "Oh, that's just punishing."
Do you know what I'd like to ask people watching to put in the comments if they have anything to contribute on this? But I would like people to write the roguelike they've played that they feel was the most fair or the most skill based, and the one that they played that they felt wasn't, that was way too heavy on the RNG. Just to get a nice, almost like encyclopedia of not good and bad. I'm not going to say good and bad because it doesn't mean either's good or bad, but just that differentiation between the two, because I think that could help some people that are curious about roguelites, but that's the stumbling block, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, stick it down there. That'd be nice. Thank you. Last one then is another one that released quite recently. It's RPM, or Road Punk Mayhem.
Yeah, this is a bullet hell shooter. Top-down bullet hell shooter that has a mechanic where you can basically pause time and allow yourself some bullet time to dodge out of the way of things. Seems fun enough from what we've played so far. There are a few times where I was struggling to work out exactly how on earth you could dodge the thing that was on screen, but I feel like there's a mechanic maybe we're missing.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of Spy Hunter. Obviously being top down on a road, shooting other cars, had that sort of feel to it. But yeah, I agree with you. Like I'm not saying I'm good at shooters, because I'm not, but I do enjoy them, and I have played a lot of them. And this one, I don't know, for some reason I couldn't. Normally they pick up and play, even if you're rubbish at them, you know what you're doing straight away. There were quite a lot of mechanics going on here that just blew my mind a little bit, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice and tight and responsive. You know, it had its 60 FPS. I do like the slightly unique art style that it's gone for. It's almost like semi-comic book in some ways.
It was, yeah.
And I like that, you know, it's trying to do something perhaps a little different. But yeah, I just wasn't very good at it, I think, is the long and the short of it. But I think it's fair to say that I personally am definitely not a shooter aficionado. I think, you know, good players might pick this up and be like, yeah, you know, that's spot on. And the things that would facilitate that would be the tight controls, which this has. And it's how that dodge mechanic works to avoid those seemingly unmissable things.
Yeah, there were moments where you felt it was impossible to dodge, but it can't be. There must be a way. It just didn't seem obvious, which is kind of what you want in a first level of a shooter, just to get your head around it, because difficulty comes from avoiding it, not from its mechanics. Well, that's how it should be, you know. But it wasn't a bad game, and it as you say, I did like its art style for sure. Yeah,
I didn't see an option for multiplayer. I don't know, it just threw us straight into the single player. So.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. There was, again, not that you want explanations in a shoot 'em up, but you want it just to be so simple that you just pick it up, but there was like pressing this button, what's that doing? Then actually that's got a recharge, you can't walk out the way yet, and then everything became a bonus and everything's been thrown at you for one reason or another, and it was just a lot to take in on a shooter. So yeah, it's definitely one that needs a bit more time, I think, to maybe percolate and to really find its groove.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'll play a little bit more from now until maybe the next one of these we do, and if it needs more, then we'll add it in.
I'll tell you what I have got coming on the way from Play Asia. I'm hoping it gets here soon. I'm very excited to play, actually. I've got Dodonpachi coming, which is a very well-known, well-loved shooter from Cave. And
from a cave?
Not from a cave. Oh. It's just been lurking in a cave for all these years.
Glowing in the dark like a gem.
Waiting to be discovered. No, it's a cracking shooter. Really, very good. I will show you it when it turns up. Maybe it will be in one of these. I'm sure it will, actually. But it's it's one that has been on the Switch for a little while digitally. I didn't know it had a physical release. I was hoping it would get one, and it's got one in Asia. Hence the reason I've imported it. But yeah, it's a cracker. It's a good game. Well, it's a good game.
You heard it here first. Get in those caves. Go have a look. Might find one for yourself. So that's it for our video for today. Let us know in the comments what what you've been playing that's interesting. Do let us know those roguelites, like Glen said, the one that's been so accessible and so easy to pick up, and then the one that has just been, well, the polar opposite, really. It'd be interesting to know.
Yep, a quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.